Welcome to Ren Behind the Practice. I'm Sophie Campisi. I'm a holistic business strategist, and I spend a lot of my time in conversation with practitioners, coaches, and healers about the behind the scenes of their businesses. What I started noticing is that some of the most honest, important conversations about building a practice were happening quietly, one-on-one, behind the scenes, and often in isolation. Most practitioners are incredibly skilled at the work they do with their clients, but very few of us were ever taught or trained in how to build a successful startup business. And suddenly we've been left to figure it out on our own. This podcast exists to bring those conversations forward, the dreams, the uncertainty, the highs and lows, the recalibrations, and the messy middle. My hope is that by normalizing these conversations, we can soften the stigma, feel less alone, and start closing the gaps together. Today's guest is Ginny Field. Ginny helps people notice the patterns they're in so they can stop reacting automatically and start trusting themselves again. Ginny, it's so great to have you here. Thank you for showing up and having this conversation with me.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be here.
Before we look behind the scenes today, can you share with us a little bit more about the work you do?
The work that I do has come really from my life. So I'm spending time sitting with people to find out their own truths, to understand why their patterns were running in a particular way, to raise awareness of what their automatic patterns are. Predominantly, I'm working with people who have either experienced trauma or who are neurodiverse, both of which I have. So a lot of what I share has come from lived experience as well as qualifications. So I have 30 years of working within a domestic abuse situation. So that kind of sat me in the place of wanting to do it without the rules of a charity around me. I wanted to be able to take it in my own direction.
Which comes up a ton. I've had people on here who are former therapists, like traditional therapists or counselors in the traditional setting. I had someone recently who did NGO work, and very similar theme of like the difficult side, pros and cons, but the main difficult side of working within an institution like that is how limited you are to do the work in the way that it really needs to be done.
Absolutely. It's when you have confines, that because human beings are individuals and a system doesn't suit everybody. But if you have funding that only allows you to do this, then you can't do that. And that person really needs that. So by deciding to do it by myself means that I can do that as well as this.
Did you work in a setting like that before you decided to go into entrepreneurship, solopreneurship?
Yes. Yeah. And it burnt me out because I struggled so much to stay within the tram lines that I was expected to stay in, because as I say, I don't see human beings as a system, and I don't see that one way is going to suit everybody. And I certainly don't think a program is it might help people, but it's not actually going to solve their problem, because the answers are within themselves, and therefore that's not a program. So I'm very much about, okay, let's ask you questions so you can find your answer.
So now is the main way that you work with people through the one-on-one, more classic kind of holistic coach or practitioner style setup?
My most favorite way to work with people is definitely on a one-on-one, because it's really, really important for me to be able to connect directly. I do run group stuff, and it is beautiful to watch because then you get the connections with the other people. So for example, in a couple of days' time, I'm running an in-person day with 10 other people, and we will delve very deeply into what they're doing, but that's not the same as one-on-one. One-on-one, I believe, is the absolute perfect way, because you can let those guards down. When you build trust and connection with somebody, they tell you things that they may never have told anybody else, and that is humbling.
The clients, how long ago did you transition into doing your own thing?
2023. So it's only a couple of years, but it's been massive.
The people that you have found to connect with, clients, the community that you've cultivated around the work that you do, where have you found them generally?
What I found is, because it's a general being out there in the online space. So, I started considering all of this during COVID, when we were all locked down and we were all on lots and lots of different Zooms, and I'm really quite happy with that. A lot of my clients live hundreds of miles away from me. I have one in Europe, so it being able to get online doesn't stop that. But it's more likely that clients come through other clients, because that's the real trust place of, this is a person that you can go and say what you want to say. You haven't got to hold back. But I also know that's going to take a few sessions to build that contact, that connection, So yeah, most of my clients are referrals from other clients, or they've been around in my world for generally a year or so. So yeah, there's a real connection. I'm just trying to think, have I had anybody that I didn't really know? No, I don't think so.
Just a testament to the work you're doing, getting to
Yeah.
that place. It's a sweet spot, and it's also a testament to the work that you're doing with people works enough that they're telling other people about it.
Absolutely, and I really do love that. But as you were saying earlier, the other side of that is it's not overly manageable, because if you're waiting for somebody else to refer you, you're reliant on somebody else. So that's my place at the moment. That's this year's work, is to understand how to enter talking to people sooner. And as I mentioned, I was in charity before, so it's a real big shot learning how to run a business rather than a charity. And I did. I was one of the people that ran the charity, but understanding how to run a business that needs to make a profit as against a charity that's looking for funding is a very different thing.
It's incomparable. There actually are very few things that you can actually compare directly to those two
Yeah.
things.
So I found myself after 30 years of working thinking, oh, I don't know how to do this. I'm really, really clear. I went on some business training last week, and I marked myself very high on my performance as a coach, as a listening ear, as the person that's there. I marked myself very high on that, because I believe that I'm very, very good at what I do. But the rest, the marketing, the sales, the promotions, the cash flow management, the accountancy, all of those other stuff is just like, yeah, because that's not what I signed up for. I signed up to do the stuff that I love to do, that I know I'm good. But suddenly I've now got all of these other jobs that I'm slowly working my way through. Something as simple as learning how to go on video on social media. I didn't grow up with social media, so it's not a natural thing for me at all. And I'm not a naturally nosy person, so I'm not stalking people all over social media. It's not my interest. So suddenly having to learn just those skills alone was a very steep learning curve.
I mean, so many things that you just said are just like, are so spot on. But, I really appreciate your ability to acknowledge. And the first thing you pointed out when I was acknowledging you for the referral thing, and then you're saying, yes, it is amazing. And also the limit of it is the chance that in a way it's left to, like, there's
Yeah.
only so much, and it's not to say control, but there's not much you can do when it comes to actually building a sustainable business. There are data points that we want and we need to be able to rely on, even though there's always going to be inconsistencies and ups and downs. Like, we still do need to be able to rely on it for sustainability, for not just financial, but energetic,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
sustainability, and the toll that it takes on us for feeling like we're building a business on sand and not really ever knowing like what lever, is going to dictate this or that. It's so big. And then everything else that you said, which you so beautifully and eloquently articulated, what I think probably it'd be safe to say 99% of us are dealing with, even if not consciously so, of the realities of solopreneurship. And something that I've been sitting with, uncomfortably so, as on this side, as someone that, is the business and startup and strategy expert of, is it even possible? Is solopreneurship actually in the day and age of 2026 even possible when it comes to all the things that you said, wearing all of those hats for those of us who are service providers, when our magic, but not even just our magic, but what we are here to do is do the work? and be with the people, be in communion and connection and community with the people that we are here to serve in this lifetime, in the face of the reality of like running a business, like all of it, every single aspect of a solopreneurship. I don't know.
No, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I was sat with several different business owners last week, of different types of businesses as well. Some were product based and others were service based, but nothing like what I do. And actually feeling really comfortable because I'm sitting there with a whole load of other people who have all got the same sort of struggles. It might not be for the same sort of business, but it's the same. Okay, how do we lift our promotion? How do we look at what our cash flow is? We're all kind of looking for the same sorts of things, whatever your business is. And it made me realize that, again, because you and I said a little bit earlier that, connection is incredibly important for me. And it kind of ties in also about, bringing children up, and we don't have that village around us anymore. That it's the same thing. And the thing that I really try hard to do is to step out and talk to other business owners, because I don't feel so alone. And there's a recognition. I'm quite honest. I'm neurodiverse. I'm going to overshare as much as I possibly can. That's just my natural being. So I will say, I'm really struggling with this. How do you go about that? I'll listen to it and see if it's relevant to me and take out the little bits that I think are relevant to me. But you've either got to have an awful lot of money or a lot of gumption to keep yourself going as a single person doing everything, because we all require the dopamine hits of actually doing the work that we love to do. And you've got to have some sort of dopamine hit if you're working in a business on your own, because otherwise you just wouldn't be doing it. And so I'm learning to understand that actually looking at my figures can be a dopamine hit as well. Even if the figures are going, oh, this isn't so good, but the fact that I understand them, I'm sitting there patting myself on the back and going, yes, well done you, because you can see this. And if you can see that this isn't working so well for you, that means that you now have the awareness to be able to do something about it, to change it. And it's for me, that's when I'm sat here at my desk on my own, I am just searching for those little nuggets of, look, I'm better at this today than I was yesterday. And that's all I can ask of myself. Not having a big team around me, because if you were in a big business, you'd have a marketing team and a sales team, and they'd all be very, very different people. I have to be all of those. You have to be all of those. That's not where our skill base sits.
No. And yeah, you brought up so many interesting points. And again, you articulated that so well, and I appreciate your ability to do that, because yeah, I mean, what you described about, even if you look at your numbers and you're able to acknowledge that they're not good, means that you at least know how it works to be able to acknowledge that it's not good. And then you can do something about it. And that is the very basic formula to, and you and I were talking about this before we started the recording, to actually making lasting change, right? You have to be able to acknowledge something first. That is, there's something in breakdown. There's a problem that I need to do something about. This is causing some sort of breakdown in my life or my business. Then seek out some sort of tool to be able to solve the problem, whether it's taking a course or joining a program or getting a coach or whatever it is. Then start gaining the competency, acknowledging it. Then you can do something about it. Before you acknowledge it, your chances of actually making change are none, like limited, maybe none. I don't know. I don't know if it's going too far to say none. And I think that's, this actually has come up with so many people on this podcast. I mean, it's part of why I'm even having the podcast and just having the conversations. And I've had people ask, well, we want to hear your expertise and we want you to do more coaching style, which maybe that will come at some point. But this is the basic formula of actual change and transformation, is like, first, you just got to sit with it and talk about it and put language to like what's going on and feel seen and feel heard and sit with the discomfort sometimes. Like sometimes you just have to like talk about it and sit with it and think about it and noodle about it. Like that step can't be skipped over. So even with me in this, I'm like, I can't skip over and just try to start telling people what to do. Like, this is so important. Like this step of just talking about it and putting language to it and connecting around it. I see it as just being so vital.
It's, again, as we were saying just before we started recording, the fact is, at the end of the day, when you recognize that actually, look, this isn't working and I need to shift something here, it often gets a bit messier or a lot messier before it starts getting better. But the more that you can actually let all of that mess out of your head, the easier it becomes. It's still not going to be particularly easy, but actually having it all, I know for me, when it's all inside my head and it's all jumbled and I can't make any sense of it, being able to sit down with somebody and say, right, okay, there's this, there's this, often makes me go, well, actually, that's not relevant and that's not relevant. But until I allow it out, I don't know. And it is messy and it's not glorious. It's not a lot of the time overly professional because it's all just tumbling out so that I can make sense of it. But it is a bit like sort of sitting and drawing it out on a piece of paper, isn't it? I like to do that verbally. I like to do that with another person. I like that connection. And I think it's a really valuable way to do that because then you're also getting somebody else going, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Or have you thought of this? And it is just recognizing that the mess is okay. I liken it to a lot of my clients that in the fact that actually the day you decide to pull all of your wardrobe out and sort it out because it's a big mess in there. And when you look down on the floor and you just think, oh my goodness, there's this mess everywhere. And why did I start this? And what, well, the reality is it's got to get that bad before you can put it right. And that's, I think, if I couldn't recognize that, I'd have probably gone, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. And I have been very lucky with, the people that have appeared in my world at the right time to talk to, having a beautiful conversation with you today has made my head go, oh, okay, not something I'd considered. Let's think about that. It is expanding those conversations that allows you. That's why podcasts are an amazing thing, aren't they? Because you can listen to them, get motivated by them, learn new skills by them without actually spending a huge amount of money or time on it. And I think and there's the other thing, isn't it? When you're a solopreneur, there isn't money abounding. We are generally, if we had a lot of money, we'd put a marketing team in place. We'd get the accounts department up, wouldn't we? We are sitting here trying to work all of this out. But I know also for myself, I made that decision of before I ask somebody else to do this for me, I need to understand why they're doing it. I'm very much a person, even when I'm in my employed jobs, I always started low down and learnt and went through so that I knew then that towards the end of my career of being employed, I was running the team. But I knew what the team had to do because I had to do it myself and I knew how that felt. So it's very much, I'm still very much in that place of if I were able to, I'm not quite ready to hand that over to other people. I'm ready to sit and talk about it with other people, but I'm not quite ready to hand it over because then it'll be like, I don't know how that works. The only things that I like to hand over to other people, when I started my podcast and I was talking to my podcast producer and she's telling me how to do all these things because she's teaching me. And I just said to her, will I ever have to do this again? Will I ever have to go and get this number to connect my podcast into Apple or Spotify, whatever that word is for whatever? And she said, no, once it's done, that's it. And I'm just like, I don't need to know then. That if they're one-offs and I don't need to know about them and they're specialists, fine, I'm happy for somebody else to do it. But if it's something I've got to repeat, I want to understand how that works. It's my business. It's me on the line. So I want to understand how that works.
So wise. And I think that most, if not all of us, will resonate with that. And I think that the knee-jerk reaction to hand something off is overwhelm. It's just overwhelm.
Yeah.
We're so overwhelmed. We're trying to solve a problem. Most people, this is coming from like the behind the scenes of my side and my job and what I do, most people are problem aware. They know something's not working with their business, but not necessarily solution aware. They don't know what the real solution is. And yeah, it creates this overwhelm of like, God, I need this problem solved. I need this fixed. I don't know what it is. It's overwhelming. It's, lack of distinctions, lack of, hopefully that this podcast can start putting a small dent in the void of just like getting some language to the breakdown, the overwhelm, for the thing that every single one of us is seeking, which is like we have this North Star of vocation, of life's work, of mission, of whatever you want to call it, Dharma. And we know where the North Star is, but we're struggling to figure out where the starting point is or how to work that North Star backwards so that we can actually be with the work, be doing what we, the reason we started it or the reason we answered the call to service in the very first place. And that's painful. I think that it's not acknowledged enough, maybe because a lot of the business stuff out there isn't specific to our industry, but it's very, very painful and sad and a lot of other words to feel really clear about what you're meant to be doing, the mission you're meant to be forwarding, and not be able to do it.
It can also be, I was working with somebody on social media stuff, and there's this, just go and make these videos, just put some captions on and just go and do this and just go and do that and just do, and I'm thinking, I've got clients all day long. I'm not, for somebody that produces and teaches people how to do social media in that way, that's what they do all day long. So they're recording themselves having a cup of tea. They're recording themselves driving the car. They're recording themselves. I'm sat here in front of my computer talking to my clients for most of the time. So I'm not creating that. So it's where we're looking in different ways at things, isn't it? How for one person something seems easy, and for another person, that's a big mountain to climb. That's a big mountain to climb. Because again, we're on our own. We only have so many hours in a day. And I'm very clear at my stage in my career, I am not working 24 hours a day again. Most of my work is about looking after you, is making sure that you get the balance between being and doing. So I'm not going to be working. I want to be able to go and spend the time and make sure that my nervous system is okay. So it is identifying how much time am I going to spend on this. And one of the big things that I've really got into in lots of different ways, it's interesting because it's been there a lot for me talking to my clients. And then I realized, if I do that in my business, because being neurodiverse and working with neurodiverse clients, overwhelm is a massive thing. And I will bring it back to, okay, today, let's look at what is today. What needs to happen today? And then we'll break that down into actually what needs to happen by the end of today, what needs to happen by tea time, what needs to happen until we get back to what needs to happen now. And that, I suddenly thought, why aren't you applying that to your business, to the accounts? Do I need to have a whole year's worth of accounts sorted by the end of today? No, I don't. Not unless it's the last day of the year. But no, I don't. No, I don't. What I actually just need to do is put these figures in that will make this happen. And bringing it back, what do I need to do now so that I'm not getting so overwhelmed? I'm recognizing not to talk to too many other professionals that are asking you questions in one day, because if I'm talking to somebody that's teaching me social media and I'm talking to my accountant on the same day, it's all too much. It's too much in one place. So now I'm very conscious of my diary of how many experts am I speaking to today. I need to split this up because there's not just the speaking to them, but the work that needs to be done after I've spoken to them. No, I'm learning. So it is actually managing my diary in a way for me that it doesn't push me into overwhelm too often, because it doesn't always work. But, it is finding the ways that can support me to do that. And it is sort of, dip your toe in the water and just see, oh, that worked. Ooh, that one didn't.
Totally. Yeah. And it's a really interesting view on how to approach it, and really specifically on thinking about how many experts. I was talking to someone recently, maybe it was someone that I did on the podcast. I don't remember exactly. And one of her biggest problems was that when she was seeking out expertise to solve a problem, was that it was putting so much more on her plate.
Yes.
And she's just like, I don't like, it was putting so much more on her plate. And it's a big bottleneck that she was acknowledging in a little bit different way. But the system kind of air quotes that you've come up with to manage that problem, of course, it isn't a full solution. We're still having major problems with solopreneurship. Again, like you said, you've been in this course recently with other business owners of different types. I mostly talk to people who are business owners of our type, so I can definitely speak on behalf of our industry of just the breakdown of all of these things. Like, how do we possibly do all of these things when what we're really meant to be doing is spending time with people, spending time with clients? Then we have all of this other stuff, the business stuff, the behind the scenes stuff that needs to happen to keep all that flowing. And then we're meant to be the way showers. Like we are the ones teaching people how to live whole, fulfilled, healthy lives and lifestyles. Like you said, I'm not going to work 24 hours in a day. We can't walk the walk if we are throwing out our health and our well-being and our relationships and our self-care just because all of a sudden we're entrepreneurs and solopreneurs and business owners. And so like that's a really interesting kind of trifecta of a tangle of a problem that I think is part of what's contributing to our kind of like collective industry breakdown mixed with, the technical side that I'll kind of sprinkle on top, the technical business side of the reality of consumer behavior in 2026 and what it takes to build trust. And like, it's not COVID times and especially pre-COVID times where people like one simple funnel worked. Like, no, it doesn't. People don't want to be herded in a single direction. Building trust is way different in 2026 than it even was in 2020 and 2021, especially before then. And like all these things, again, that's the kind of sprinkle on top of like the business data and dynamics that, is my area of expertise. But yeah, it's a little bit of it's a jumble.
And there's no one answer either. I can listen to somebody that's made a certain part of things work, and I think, yeah, that's not me. And that was one of the things when I first started was I'm following everybody's, this is the rule book, follow this, do this. And then somebody else is telling me to do it completely different. And that was just massively overwhelming. And that was the point where my business is called Just Being Me. And I kicked back and went, I just want to be me. I don't want to be a performing animal on screen doing all of it. I'm not doing that. No, I'm not. I just want to be me. This is what this is about. This is about the journey of being me. What I learned on my journey that brought me to this place. And now I'm being pushed out of this place because of my business. That's not happening. So there's a lot of me that just goes, no, you can tell me that's the right way, but it doesn't feel comfortable to me. So therefore, that's not going to happen. It has to feel comfortable for me. I recognize that I have to step out of my comfort zone, but if something is not feeling comfortable for me, then either you've got to explain it more and more and more to me so that it does feel comfortable, or I'm not doing it. And that came up as a really big thing for me, that it's just going to be done the way that I feel is comfortable.
What you're saying, it's so important, the distinction between doing something that's just hard and difficult and out of your comfort zone versus doing something that's not in alignment. And that is something that makes our pocket of the world unique, is that we are wide awake, conscious, autonomous beings who aren't just going to do something because someone tells us. So in other parts of the business world, maybe that works. You have someone say, oh, this is the way to do it. Someone's just going to do it, plug and play. And regardless of how it feels on their body, either because they're not in tune enough to feel it or they're overriding it for whatever reason, not that they're wrong for that, but we aren't those types of people. So it won't. It's counter to everything, all of it, right? Like it's our superpower, and interestingly has made the business side more difficult because we're not just funneling in and following the leader and just doing the same thing. And yeah.
But for me, there's something integral in that, in the fact that actually, because we're not just doing that, means we care about the people that come through our business, because we care about who we are. And therefore, that's going to come out to anybody that works with us, whether that's as a client or whether that's actually as somebody teaching us stuff. There's still, for me, the connection has to be there either way, whether it's somebody teaching me something, it's somebody doing something for me, or it's me doing something. I really don't, it doesn't matter. For me, it has to be that because I'm allowed to stay as who I am, that means that I care about the people that are around me. Just because there's money involved doesn't mean to say you don't care about people. For me in my world, it just means that we have to understand how to do the business side of things in a way that supports us. And that's not easy, because business is very much a unemotional thing. So it's finding the unemotional part that I can live with. And I've been, things like the accounts, I work with an amazing person who I connect with incredibly. And she's taught me the joy of, look, when this all adds up, I'm like, yay. So being able to start doing the cash flow side of things with a level of excitement of, let's see what happens here. Let's play this game and see if I can win. It's all, I can say it all in a very different way. It's the figures tonight. I've got to do the figures tonight. It's exciting now rather than a chore, and it's learning to do all the other bits and pieces in that way and understanding what they are, because that's a minefield in itself, isn't it?
If you could wave a magic wand and have one thing solved or fixed, one or two or three, in your building process or in this entrepreneurship, solopreneurship, business side part of the work that you do, what would it be?
I think I'd like to bring awareness to the uniqueness of everybody. I think I'd like things to stop being, we must follow a system, because I don't think systems work for human beings. And because that's who I want to identify with everybody on your unique, beautiful level. I don't want a system to have to follow. I want a human being. Does that answer what you were asking?
Yeah. Jenny, thank you so much for joining me today to have this conversation. And for those of you who are listening, if any part of this resonated, you're in the right place, please reach out. I want to hear from you. And if you want to reach Jenny directly, the links to her website and her Facebook profile are in the show notes. Thank you again, Jenny, and to everyone else. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you for the next episode of Bryn Behind the Practice.